In Australia, if a man pulls on his best suit and tie and shoes and steps into a church, you know you're either at a wedding or a funeral. Nothing wrong with that. It's an important time. You should dress up for the occasion. An important time. Facing death really focuses a person. It did for Jesus. I'm not sure if you remember, but he often spoke of Jerusalem being the place of his death. The place where he would be sentenced to death, handed over to foreigners, mocked, spat on, beaten and killed. If I were Jesus, Jerusalem is the one city in this whole world that I would not want to visit. But I'm not Jesus. In the last few weeks of his life, Jesus resolutely set out for Jerusalem. He faced his death and focused on his destiny to be king. When they were getting close to Jerusalem, Jesus sent two of them out ahead. He told them, "Go into the next village. As soon as you enter it, you'll find a young donkey that has never been ridden. Untie the donkey and bring it here. If anyone asks why you're doing that, say, 'The Lord needs it, and will soon bring it back.'" The disciples left and found the donkey tied near a door that faced the street. While they were untying it, some of the people standing there asked, "Why are you untying the donkey?" They told them what Jesus had said, and the people let them take it. The disciples led the donkey to Jesus. They put some of their clothes on its back, and Jesus got on. Many people spread clothes on the road, while others went to cut branches from the fields. In front of Jesus and behind him, people went along the road shouting, "God rescue us! God bless the one who comes in the name of the Lord! God bless the coming kingdom of our ancestor David! Praise God in heaven above!" What an impression he made as he rode into the city. Not in a suit and tie on the latest chariot, but simply on a donkey. Well, why the palm branches? Why the massive crowd? Well, Israel was expecting the return of its rightful king to Jerusalem, riding on a donkey, as the prophet Zechariah had said way back. Israel in Jesus' time was ruled by Rome, and into that situation, Zechariah's prophecy was like dynamite. "Shout, daughter of Jerusalem! See, your king comes to you, righteous and having salvation, gentle and riding on a donkey." By organizing a donkey ride into Jerusalem, Jesus is saying that he is the king God has promised. And the crowds get it. They are pumped to be alive when God's true king rides into Israel. They wave their branches and they shout their heads off. Talk about momentum. Here is Jesus' finest hour. Surely this is time to seize the moment, arm the people, throw off Roman rule. Instead it fizzes, a complete anticlimax. Mark writes about it in his historical account. After Jesus had gone to Jerusalem, he went into the temple and looked around at everything. But since it was already late in the day, he went back to Bethany with the 12 disciples. Instead of the armed rebel leader, he becomes a tourist. Goes into the temple and looks around for a bit. Then it seems that he looks at his watch and goes, "It's getting a little late." And he heads back to the nearby town with the 12 disciples. Get the crowd all fired up for that? A wander in the temple? And then a quiet journey home in time for tea? This is a serious anticlimax. In 1 week, things go from bad to worse. Jesus isn't the king people hoped he might be. The religious and political leaders plot against him. The crowds turn against him. His followers betray and leave him. He is handed over, sentenced to death, mocked, spat on, beaten, and finally crucified on a cross as a terrorist. Not much of a king, a dead loss. Jerusalem, his place of death. Everything just as Jesus said it would happen. Here is another great man, or maybe a fanatic, killed by an uncaring world. What a tragic, messed up, pitiful waste. But it's not what you think. It never is with Jesus. 3 days later, incredibly, he rose to life, just as Jesus said he would. He appeared to his 12 followers, and after that he appeared to more than 500 others. He is the king the crowds rejected, and the king they never expected. But he is the king God promised. He defeated not Rome, but death. Jesus has changed the course of history and rescued the future of our world. One of Jesus' followers, John, had a vision of the end of time. He looked and saw many people. There were so many people that no person could count them all. They were from every country, tribe, nation and language. They were standing in front of the throne and the Lamb, and they wore white clothes, and they had palm branches in their hands. Here is heaven's version of a distant, tragic day on a dusty road into Jerusalem. The crowds, the palm branches, Jesus. But this is in the full colour, completed version, rather than the black and white, incomplete copy. The crowds are bigger, the clothes whiter. On the final day, here is not just Israel, but the whole world welcoming their king. Jesus is not just Israel's true king. He is God's true king and Lord of the world. Jesus' death wasn't an anticlimax. It was the beginning of his victory. Facing death focuses us, and Jesus' death focuses us more than most. Jesus' death also brings into sharp focus the fact that this man, who rode into Jerusalem on a donkey, was absolutely convinced that he is God's true king. But it also brings into focus that he is not the king people want, because he's the king people don't expect. The followers of Jesus expected a king who would crush and control, a king who would welcome the impressive and the powerful. Instead, we find Jesus, the king who welcomes little children, the king who stops and rescues a poor blind man, a king, gentle, humble, riding a donkey, the king who would rescue the world with his life. Jesus' death shows us what God will do to rescue us. He can take our small, little, helpless lives and exchange his life for our death, if we let him.
You know, facing death really does focus a person. Life didn't flash before my eyes, but lying in that hospital bed for those few weeks certainly gave me time to think. How did I do it? How did I come out of the coma? I didn't. I couldn't. There was nothing left for me to do. All my life, I'd looked to make something of myself. Worse, often, I simply lived to fill my life with anything that gave me pleasure. It was about me and what I could do. At the end, I couldn't do anything. You might say it's different for you. You're not in a coma. But in the end, I mean right at the end of life here, no one can possibly do a single thing to save themselves. It's a depressing thought. Unless the cronies. They haven't changed. I never told them I could hear what they were doing when they came to visit. I kept that up my sleeve. Seeing what they were like when they thought I wasn't watching was one of the few benefits of being in a coma. I know what to expect from them now. The experience also helped to know what it feels like firsthand when it happens to you. I don't think they understand why my attitude to Roz has changed. I did help ease their blatant rudeness towards her, although I expect that still happens in the background. Roz, I know I still get frustrated when it comes to computer things, but I hope I no longer take it out on you. And I have appreciated the advice you've given in regards to other more important aspects of my life. Wesley, my little pal. How right you were, Wes. I couldn't do it on my own. I had to let go. Trust in something bigger than myself. Throw away all those things that separate the way I think and the way you think. I had to trust like a child. I hope you do see God when you are big, and I pray you show him to your mum. He's not Santa, Wes. Not some story to remember fondly from your childhood. Don't forget, Wes. Keep it simple, not too tricky. Mum's mum. Always has been, probably always will. Acting as the steady foundation of our family. She told me when I came to that she was scared of what her life would have been like if I'd not made it. But I know she's stronger than that. She has a strong foundation of her own. Dad's trying. We've been seeing each other more often. We do lunch now, every Friday. Well, it's not much, but he's finally giving me the one thing I really needed. He's also been taking time off each Saturday to take Wes to his swimming lessons. He even made sure he caught the early flight from his interstate trip just to be there. Now that's commitment. I think he's finally realised what really matters. I think my accident was hardest on Jeremy. Reliving the possible loss of another friend, coupled with his failing relationship with Megs. They never did get back together. I know he was cut pretty deep by the breakup, but he's coming to terms with it. He knows why it happened. With what Tracy was telling me when she thought I couldn't hear, well, I guess it may have happened to me. Commitment. I reckon the thing about commitment is that it's inconvenient. Dad only saw us when it was convenient, and I only spent time with Tracy as long as it didn't inconvenience me. Listening to her talk made me look closely at myself. There I was getting mad at Dad, and all the time I'd been doing exactly the same to Tracy. I'm amazed she didn't leave me. I thought I was doing it right. I bought her lots of gifts, I saw her regularly. At least I always sent flowers if I rescheduled. I even remembered her birthdays. I didn't think twice about the fact that I saw Jez more regularly, went out with him more often. I just wasn't prepared to give Tracy the one thing she needed from me. Time. I didn't deserve her, and yet she was always there for me. I tell you, when I realised how much she loved me and how little I deserved it, I was prepared to rearrange my life to give her the one thing she required. And you know, I don't regret it. Facing my death really did help to focus me. Focus me on my inability to rescue myself. I'd always tried to make myself something. I discovered I hadn't done a very good job. I always thought I was a nice guy. Guess that depends on who you're asking. Roz? Tracy? I always thought I could manage by myself. Couldn't fix my body though. Facing death focused me on God's ability to take my brokenness and turn it into something he can really use. Death was a focal point, but it no longer holds my attention. I pray that I can keep my focus on God, now that I'm facing not death, but the rest of my life.